Hello and welcome to her transformation table. Today is the 26th of January 2023, and I am so excited to have with me an amazing person, an author and a podcaster. So let me read the introduction so that I don't misintroduce her. Her name is Kate Hudson-Hall, an author, podcaster, psychotherapist, anxiety and eating disorder therapist. She is a wealth of experience in the UK, leading therapists, and a member of the NHS Directory of Complementary and Alternative Practitioners since 2004. She has authored Bulimia S, a book on how to reprogram the mind to overcome bulimia, and her just launched book, Anxiety Hacks, which is our topic of the day here on her transformation table. Welcome, Kate. Tell us more
Oh,
about yourself.
thank you, Mary. I'm so pleased to be here.
Welcome. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you.
Incidentally, has anyone ever asked you if you're related to Kate Hudson?
No, well, they have. Yes, that often comes up. But alas, I had the name first. I've had it a lot longer than her.
That's good to know. So, Kate, first question, what is anxiety?
So, well, we all have anxiety. It's a normal, natural emotion. So when we are maybe going for an interview or we've got to do some sort of speech or presentation, we will have feelings where the body will get flushed with adrenaline, cortisol will get flushed throughout the body. We may get tense. We may get sort of very uptight, if you like. And then once the event has passed, we will return back down to our normal, natural state. But anxiety is it happens with people when they, when once that threat, whatever it may be, has passed, they still stay up at that heightened level because they have all these thoughts and they're worrying consistently. And there are so many people now that seem to be anxious all the time. It's a bit like having an alarm going off, a car alarm going off inside you. So there is, because they're not coming back down to that calm, natural state, the body is consistently pumping adrenaline and cortisol throughout the body all the time because they can't sort of step back down into that normal pattern. And it's so difficult for the body. And if somebody is stressed, they're quite often, it leads into anxiety, because if you're stressed and you're nervous and you're worried and you're uptight all the time, it's going to keep you in that heightened state. And in that heightened state, it was all very well, our forefathers to be in that heightened state in order to protect ourselves from that saber-toothed tiger. And because of the body and how it, like I said, it flushes the body with adrenaline, it flushes it with cortisol, the digestive system slows right down, the immune system is affected, and all because it wants to give us that energy to be able to fight that saber-toothed tiger or to run for the hills. So that's all very well to have that, which is fantastic. And everybody's been developed this way, but it's causing a problem now because people, if you think over the last 2-3 years, over here we were locked down, and then the doors were open, then we were locked down again, and that unknown, that fear about what was going to happen, and then the cost of living crisis, and then the war in Ukraine bumbling on. It's people's fears and worries are heightened to the extent that it's keeping them up in this anxious state, which is so debilitating for people.
And so, in short, you're saying it's almost like a form of protection that comes over you.
It's your body naturally protecting itself, but it's kind of got confused, if you like.
Okay, and it's also genetic because it comes from all the struggles we had as early men coming all the way to now.
Yeah.
So I guess my next question would be, how do you know you're having anxiety and not any other issue?
Well, if you find yourself worrying consistently, uncontrollably, um, and if it's affecting your everyday life at school or at work or at home, your social life, and you just can't let go of those worries, and this is all that you can think about, and you're worrying about your job, you're worrying about your health, you're worrying about minor concerns, worrying about doing the chores around the house, then that is quite a clear indication that you have anxiety because you're just constantly worrying all the time.
Is there a prevalence, like, is it men who have more anxiety or women who have more anxiety, or is it just equal across the board?
So anxiety is much more prevalent in females. A female is twice as likely to get anxiety as men. That's what statistics show us, which is
Is there
interesting.
a reason why we just naturally worry more, or
Maybe we have more on our plate.
definitely, we definitely do. That's interesting. So it's not that our genetic makeup or hormonal makeup, it's just women tend to worry more.
Yes. Yeah.
Ah, okay, that's interesting. So is there a link between anxiety and other illnesses like depression?
Well, anxiety and depression are kind of interlinked anyway. So somebody that's got depression, they're more than likely going to have anxiety. And they kind of go hand in hand, if you like.
And are there other illnesses aside from depression that can be exasperated by anxiety?
Are there other illnesses? Um, well, absolutely. So say if you had OCD, for example, um, people that have that personality trait, they're more likely to also there will be a link with anxiety if you have PTSD.
Okay. What are the common or not so common triggers that that people should look out for that can trigger anxiety?
Yeah. So I think some of the common ones are, so if you drink too much caffeine, you drink too much coffee there, particularly coffee, or any sort of caffeine, that will be a common trigger. Another one would be self-neglect. If you're not really taking care of yourself, that would be a trigger for you to get anxiety because your mind isn't in that very clear place. If you don't get enough sleep, well, we all know what it's like if we don't get enough sleep. It's really tough. And that could be a trigger for anxiety. But if somebody is very stressed, this is really important. If somebody is very stressed, they're more than likely it's going to lead into anxiety. And they will stay up at that heightened state, constantly worrying um, and and just worrying, and those negative thoughts are never ending. If you're stressed and you put that pressure on yourself, and of course, in this day and age, finances, that's a big trigger. For other people, it could be social gatherings. That's quite a quite common for people that they have real difficulties in social gatherings, and that can cause anxiety, severe anxiety for some people. And also, difficulties at work. Maybe, they are really struggling at work. Maybe they've got too much work, or maybe it's some work colleagues and they're struggling with that. That could be a trigger for anxiety. But I think one uncommon, or a trigger that surprises people, is if they have a messy home environment. that will cause anxiety. People are usually quite surprised at that. But if they have an untidy, messy home, that could be a trigger.
That's very interesting. A messy home environment. If you're watching us right now live, please feel free to drop a question so that maybe we can have an answer live or a concern. And if you're watching on YouTube, in other replays, please put your comments down, and we can always refer to Miss Hall later, and she can give us some more insight. So, my next question is, does anxiety start from childhood, or is it something that can be developed in later years in adulthood?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question because if somebody has had some sort of abuse when they were a child, or some sort of traumatic event, that would lead, could well, doesn't always, but it could well lead to somebody having anxiety when they're an adult. And also, if somebody is, as an adult, if they've had a traumatic event or some sort of abuse, that that could be a real trigger for anxiety. So it's not necessarily if you're a child, but you are maybe more prone to getting anxiety as an adult if you've had it when you were young.
We have a question from Corina Rodriguez de Souza. Is anxiety found in children?
Yes, absolutely. I had anxiety from the age of 5. And my father died when I was 2. And so my mother and father was kind of rolled into one. And then when it was time for me to go to school when I was 5, I had huge separation anxiety. But of course, it was in the 1800s. It was a very long time ago. So nobody knew, what it was. And I was just told to, be quiet and just get on with it. And that continued. That separation anxiety continued until I was in my 20s with my mother. So yes, it can. From
Okay.
children can definitely have anxiety. I work with children with anxiety.
And what type of anxiety disorders exist? And is there a link between the disorder and personality? For example, social anxiety, introverts?
So the different types of common types of anxiety is the generalized anxiety disorder, which seems to be quite prevalent at the moment because of what we have been through. And then you've got OCD, so the obsessive compulsive disorder. You've got panic disorder, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, social phobias, so social anxiety. There's so many different types of anxiety. So if somebody has got anxiety, it's getting online and getting some information about what type of anxiety they've got, and then they can once they've done their research, then they can investigate further to find out how and what help is available for that specific type of anxiety.
And you had mentioned something about social anxiety. So introverts, is it that they are born with it, or it's something that they learned from childhood? Is that part of anxiety?
So, well, I think so. If you are somebody that is an introvert, there'll be reasons why you behave that way, which could well be a link to social anxiety. But anxiety is not actually a personality disorder, but nearly all personality disorders have some sort of link to anxiety.
Okay. So I have another question here from Corina D'Souza once again. She's asking, what are the symptoms in children and how can we help it in them?
So for a child, maybe they have difficulty sleeping, or maybe so like separation anxiety, they find it really difficult. And this is, it's quite common in younger children, sort of baby age. They have separation anxiety because of being separated from the mother. But for older children, the signs, there's so many different signs, but if you notice that your child is behaving, maybe withdrawing or behaving in an unusual way, it's sort of like taking and really spending time and focusing on what their behavior is. And if you feel that they are consistently worrying, consistently upset or distressed, or they sort of get themselves into a bit of a panic, that would be a signal that there'd be signals that they have anxiety.
How can it be helped? Is it only a clinical type of intervention?
For a child, I think it's a good idea to go and see your doctor first of all, and then take guidance from there. But it depends on what country you live in to what sort of help is available. But like I said, I work as a private therapist, and I work with children with anxiety. And it's kind of beginning to break down and understand for that child what specifically is the cause of these difficult feelings and thoughts that they're having. And whether the
Okay.
child would open up to the parent, because sometimes they don't feel like it. So having that external professional is maybe something that needs to be addressed with that, with that therapist or whoever it might be.
It takes me to my next question, which is what are the resources that are available for people suffering from anxiety? Is it only just the clinical, or what advice would you give?
So, well, there's lots of different ways that you can help yourself if you have anxiety. One of the kind of the top of the list would be looking for a type of talking therapy. So that could be maybe CBT, so cognitive behavioral therapy. That is fantastic about be able to help people begin to understand, break down what their patterns of behavior are, and start to address the thoughts that they have with that behavior, the anxious behavior. And once they understand that, then they can begin to gradually to change that behavior. Because a lot of 50% of what we do every day as well is a habit. So it's starting to really begin to address those thoughts that you have. And we have approximately 60,000 different thoughts that go through our mind every day, which is an extortionate amount. And some of them are in the forefront, some are just floating in the background, and thoughts come just wisping in and they wisp out again. But then the majority of thoughts are linked to the feelings that we have. And then feelings, you may have a feeling, and then that's linked to thoughts. So it kind of goes around in a cycle. And 75% of the thoughts for people overall in general are negative thoughts, because that's how we have been created. Our forefathers were created in order to keep us safe and protect ourselves. And 95% of those thoughts that you have every day are the same. For most people, are the same thoughts that we had the day before. So it's very difficult to begin to break that pattern unless you do start to listen to those thoughts that you have that are connected to the feelings, and start to begin to gradually become aware of how you're talking to yourself, and start to change that pattern is a real positive. Also, to help people with anxiety, relaxation techniques, and there's so many different types of breathing techniques out there that are really powerful to help people with anxiety. And then, of course, there's the medication. So if you feel, speak to your doctor and see what they advise. But there are a lot of different techniques and tools that you can find that can help you to begin to break your anxious behaviors.
So basically, change your thoughts, change your feelings, and then change your pattern and your pattern of thoughts, and things should improve from there. That
Yeah,
should be the
and that,
process.
it sounds all very well saying that, doesn't it? But it's taking it's beginning to break down and be aware of what your behavioral patterns are, and starting to begin to change those. And those behavioral patterns are all connected to thoughts and feelings.
Okay.
And so, it is a good idea to find information. So in my book, Anxiety Hacks, I have lots of different techniques and tools to be able to help people begin to break their patterns. But it's also there's downloadable templates for you to start to complete a diary, and then you can start to write down the date and the time and your thoughts that you're having, and then the feelings that come up with those thoughts, and start to actually begin to unravel the behaviors that you have. Awareness is the first step. So you need to start to be aware of what the patterns are, and then you can begin to identify what the triggers are that send you into that anxious state. So it's starting to, first of all, to write down your thoughts and feelings and start to fill out your diary, because then you can look at it. If you do that for a week, then you can look back and say, okay, right, well, this happened, and then that caused me to feel this way. And then it's when you're in that situation again, so it's thinking, okay, so that happened before, so what can I do differently? What specifically is the trigger? So then you can start to work with that.
Umar Hamid agrees with you. He's commenting yes. So you must have resonated with him quite
Oh,
well.
good. Oh, good.
You spoken about your books. You have written the book Bulimia Sucks, and
Bulimia.
the latest book is same as our topic today, which is Anxiety Hacks. So, what is your personal experience with anxiety, if you could share with us?
Yeah, well, I, as I said before, I had anxiety from the age of 5, and that went on for years and years and years. When I was 9, I was sexually abused. Then I was sent to boarding school, which was really difficult, and that brought up all sorts of problems. And then I was sexually abused again when I was 17. And then when I was 18, I developed the eating disorder bulimia, which an eating disorder and anxiety, they go hand in hand. So I had that for 15 years. I was sexually abused again when I was 25. And then when I was in my 30s, I went to the doctor, went to some different therapists, and then eventually found a therapist that I felt comfortable with, that I could open up to. And so then we could start to work through all of these past difficult experiences that I'd had, and then also with the eating disorder and the anxiety. And then when I finally came out the other side, it was like, oh my gosh, I want to be able to help other people how I've been helped. So 3 years ago, I trained to be a therapist. So, but I have had, even now, since lockdown, sometimes, I wake up and I think, oh my gosh, it's the unknown about what, after all we've been through these last few years, it's, what is going to happen today? And I may get anxiety, but I have the tools now to be able to work with it, to be able to reduce it and to keep it at bay as much as possible.
That's amazing. And speaking of your books, where exactly can we get them?
So I've got the Bulimia Sucks series. All the books are on Amazon. So I've got the Bulimia Sucks book. And then there's also a workbook and a food journal that goes with that. And then I also have a podcast called Bulimia Sucks. And we've had over 35,000 downloads, and it's for eating disorders. So that is fantastic, because we're reaching out to people and hopefully helping people. And then the anxiety hacks. I have just started up a podcast for that. The book was only launched in November, as the podcast was. So in the book, it's just, I've got it packed. It's really simple and easy to read, which was very important for me. But it's packed full of so many different ways that you can begin to experiment and find out what works for you to be able to break your anxiety. Because I think, we're all different, aren't we? So it's really important to find what works for you. And in the book, I talk about and explain about mindfulness and how powerful that is. There's a technique called thought stopping technique, which is really good. And there's NLP techniques, so neuro linguistic programming techniques in the book. And there's a number of those. And then, of course, I talk about the breathing. And then another technique in there is called the emotional freedom technique. So that's the tapping therapy. So it's tapping on a routine of points while thinking about any negative feeling. And you can reduce down that feeling. It's excellent for anxiety. And so for people watching here now, the specific tapping point for anxiety is your collarbone point. So where my collarbone comes down to a V here, so mine's very prominent, but the majority of people's aren't. I don't know why mine is, but if you take two fingers and you tap on that bone, if you tap on that bone while you have anxiety, you will find that it will reduce down your anxiety. So when I tap on this, I can feel it. I like using two hands for this. So two fingers tapping on that point, and I feel my whole body go, ooh, like that. But it's an excellent point. Or if you're in company and you don't want to do that, you could just rub it in a circle, and that will help to reduce down your anxiety.
But would you say it's... No, go ahead.
But the whole routine, so in my book, I teach you the steps, but also with the book, there's a companion course. It's a free companion course that you can sign up to. Now, there's videos of me showing you how to do each technique and other downloadable tables and things. So it's excellent to be able to read it and then actually see somebody doing it. So, but the emotional freedom technique, there's 8 points that you tap on your face and your body while thinking about your anxiety, and you can reduce it down. Brilliant. I love it.
I was going to ask, is it a situation, how they say, like, if maybe you hit yourself somewhere and there's quite a bit of pain, if you pinch yourself in a different place,
so like a distraction,
it tends to distract the body.
So the way that it works is emotional freedom technique is it's like acupuncture for people that have had acupuncture, but without the needles. So it is working on the body's energy. So it's working with the body's energy, and you're tapping on meridian channel endings, so the energy channel endings. And when somebody has a problem, whatever that problem may be, there's a blockage in the energy. And by tapping on this routine of points, you can unblock that energy. But it sounds completely bizarre. It is completely bizarre, but it works. And you don't actually have to believe in it for it to work. So you've got nothing to lose. You could give it a go.
Yeah, I can imagine some people are thinking it's the term I see a lot of people using is woo-woo. People think it's a bit woo-woo, but if it works, it works.
You've got nothing to lose. You could try it, couldn't you?
Yeah. So my final question, unfortunately, is, if we forget everything you have told us today, what is the one thing you'd like us to take away on the topic of anxiety?
I would like to say, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. I love that quote. So, and also awareness is the first step. So in order to slow down your busy thoughts, your worrying, anxious thoughts, start to write them out. Write them down. Get yourself a notebook, and start to list the date and the time and those thoughts and feelings, and start to see what the patterns are that send you into that spiral of anxiety and what you're thinking about. And then once you've done that, then you can at least you can then begin to change. And once you've identified the trigger that caused you to think like that, then you can start to use different techniques to be able to break those patterns.
Well, this has been amazing. Unfortunately, we've come to the end. I'm so happy and humbled that you came and spoke with us, Kate. For those of you who are watching on replay, there will be all of her details in the description. Check in the description and the comment section also for YouTube. Also for Facebook, I shall be reposting the replay. And once again, if you have any questions, please let us know. Kate Hudson-Hall, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Oh, Mary, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I hope that, we've been able to help some people with anxiety, because it's just so debilitating, and I get that. Just having those tools to be able to do it. So thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. Once again, if you want her book, it's available on Amazon, and check out all of her links. Thank you so much for joining us today on Thursday. We will strive to be here every Thursday, 2 p.m. EST or 7 p.m. London time, that is GMT, 10 p.m. East Africa time. Thank you, and see you next week, where we'll have another amazing speaker to give us some amazing value. Enjoy the rest of the week. Bye.